Hello, I'm Ben, and I just thought I'd do a really quick video to introduce you to one of the most basic things you can do with tape when making weird electronic music. This is, of course, making loops. You're probably familiar if you produce music with the term loops, and this is where it comes from. It's obviously literal tape loops stuck together with bits of sticky tape. So, the basic principle is you record something, find the bits you want to loop, and then make a loop. So, I'll start with recording something. I've got a microphone set up here, so I'll just say hello into the microphone and record that to tape. Obviously, the first thing to do is to get some tape into the recorder. This is a domestic model, so it's got a couple of basic speeds. These Tandbergs are pretty old. I think they were made in the 1960s, but I like that they're square so you can rack them up, and I like the look of them, and they sound alright. They are mono, but for editing they're really good as well, because there's an easy path past the tape head, so it's quick to work with it. So I'm going to lace the tape through the machine so that I can then record onto it. With these machines it's as simple as that. Even with my terrible fingers, there we go. Now you can of course record directly into the tape machine through the microphone input, but I've got this set up so that the microphone goes through some audio effects to make it a bit more interesting. That's now armed for recording. And I'm just going to shout some garbage into the microphone. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. And that should do it. So now we have a sound recorded onto the tape. The next thing we need to do is find the bit that we want to loop and cut it out. And we do that by literally scrubbing the tape forwards and backwards past the tape head, and you can hear where the sound starts and ends, and mark that off with a Chinagraph pencil. So I've rewound the tape, and now I've got the tape going across the playhead. These machines, the playhead's still on even though it's not spinning round. I haven't got it in play mode. And if I drag the tape across the playhead, I can find the start of the sound and cut it there. Hello. It's me. So that's the point that the sound starts that I want. So I'm going to mark it off with this Chinagraph pencil. If this was quite a short sound rather than a load of garbling, you'd find the end as well by finding where it stops. Because this is a bit longer, I'm just going to measure what I want. And I have a ruler set up on this desk so I can measure the length of tape. Now, because this was recorded at 7.5 inches a second, I know obviously 7.5 inches of length of tape will give me a second. So for the purposes of this, I'll do a 4-second loop, so that's 30 inches. So I'll measure that out now, starting from the white line that I drew on with the pencil. So I've removed the tape from the machine, and I've finally found the white line that I left before again. This tape's a bit shiny, so it's quite hard to draw on it. The good stuff's black and it can leave a really clear line. So right, I obviously need to cut it at the start, and for that I'm going to need a splicing block. It's just a piece of metal, exactly the right width to hold the tape, with a couple of lines so you can use them as a guide to cut with a razor. That's a very abrupt straight cut, which unfortunately can result in a popping sound if you get a sudden cut through some noise. Well, this is the one I usually use, which is a nice diagonal, so you get a bit of a fade in. It's not much, but it's enough to stop it doing a horrible pop. So you put it in there, grab a razor blade and cut it. So now the very start of the sound we want to use for the loop is here. I'm now going to flip that over and measure out the 30 inches we need for 4 seconds of audio for the loop. I'm now going to mark that off with the Chinograph pencil. So now, if I also cut that, I'll have the required length of tape that I'd like for my desired loop. Right. Now obviously it's important to remember which way the tape's going to go, because this will record on both sides of the tape, so you don't want to end up with it backwards or, yeah, completely missing. So that is the direction of travel it needs to be going. So you've got to keep an eye on that. Next, we make the loop. So place the end of the sound to the left in the splicing block, ring it round, and then grab a piece of this lovely blue splicing tape, and then I use the razor blade to hold it, to position it nice and accurately. Now, one thing you don't want to have is any overlap, especially if that overlap's going to form a lip that comes into contact with the playhead, because it will just destroy it as it goes through the machine. So you can leave a tiny gap there, but very, very tiny. You also don't want the tape to stick to things. So it's a little bit rough, but there's our loop. And you can see where the join is there. The next thing to do is put it in the machine. And see if it works. So that does work rather well. Once you've got the loop, you can do all sorts with it. You can put it through effects, you can get several loops going on different machines. You can also obviously change the speed. So that's it, that's the very basics of making a loop. You literally just make a loop of tape containing whatever sound or sounds you'd like to manipulate. That's the very basic version. I do a lot of stuff where I cut bits out of different loops, change the pitch of things to create melodies and stick that together, but that's a lot more involved and requires quite a lot of planning and time. So I'll do that in a further future video, but for now, have fun with loops.